London, 1888, a city illuminated by the Industrial Revolution. But in the streets of Whitechapel, there was only darkness. And then, a murder happened, then another, a third, a fifth, and it all kept going until the entire city began to tremble at the name of Jack the Ripper. But the question is, was Jack just a murderer? Or something the world has never truly understood? This is not just a story, this is the truth of a time where death was just one step away and the killer could be hiding in every corner. So get ready, because now we are heading toward that night where the most infamous shadow in human history is still alive. London, 1888, a city that was the heart of the world's greatest empire, where on one side there was the noise of industries, the glow of gaslights, and the rush of horse carriages. On the other side there were alleyways, where life was a constant struggle. No piece of bread, no comfort of sleep. Victorian London, a city that was a blend of both extremes. For the rich, a life of comfort, and for the poor, only darkness, hunger, and helplessness. And in this very darkness, there was a place, Whitechapel, that area of East London, where poverty screamed for its existence at every turn, where narrow alleys twisted through the dark, and each one hid a story that was never told. But then came a story that didn't just come to light. It became one of the most terrifying tales the world has ever known. A tale where the murder wasn't just of the body, but one that pierced straight through the soul. In the summer nights of 1888, as darkness fell over Whitechapel, there was only one name echoing through people's hearts: Jack the Ripper. When the first body was found, people thought it was just an ordinary crime. But when the second, third, and fourth bodies were found in the same brutal way, every corner of Whitechapel became a center of fear, locking doors at night, avoiding the darkness, and watching every stranger with suspicion. This was the new life of Whitechapel. The victims were mostly prostitutes, already pushed to the bottom of society. But what happened to them? It wasn't just murder. This was the work of a killer who wasn't just tearing through bodies, he was ripping through humanity itself. Their throats were slit. Some had their organs removed, and the way they were post-mortemed, even the police were left shaken. It felt like this wasn't just a butcher, but a trained surgeon, someone who was not only obsessed with killing, but also knew the secrets of the human body. People spoke of only one thing, in mosques, churches, and pubs alike. Who's going to be next? Is the killer among us? Why isn't the police doing anything? Whitechapel was no longer just a place. It had become a ghost that haunted every living soul, where every second of the night echoed with the footsteps of death. 31st August 1888. One morning, another body was found in the alleys of Whitechapel. Polly, whose real name was Mary Ann Nichols. A mother, a helpless woman who had sunk deep below the line of poverty, whose life had been lost somewhere between marriage, divorce, and endless struggle. Her murder was so brutal that the police just kept staring at her face for a while. Her throat had been slit and her body bore wounds too gruesome to even look at. Polly's pain wasn't just in her death. It was written all over her life. September 1888. The next body was found in a back alley. Annie Chapman, whom people used to call Dark Eyes. She was also a mother who once had a good home, but after her husband's death, everything fell apart. Annie suffered from TB and she used to take drugs, but her heart never died. In her murder, the killer showed the same brutality, But this time an organ was also removed, which completely shook the police. This wasn't just murder. It felt like a ritual, a dark obsession. September 30th, 1888. Another body. This time it was Elizabeth Stride, known to many as Long Liz. She had come from Sweden searching for a better life in London, but life threw her into the dark alleys of Whitechapel. The unusual thing was that her body had fewer wounds. Maybe the killer was disturbed, or someone had interrupted him. But the murder still happened. The killer was always nearby, breathing and waiting for his next victim. Just a few hours later, same night, same city, Catherine Eddowes' body was found, and this time the murder was so brutal that it shook everyone to their core. Her face had been slashed open, one eye was removed, and once again an internal organ was missing. Kathy, who was a poet, who used to write about life, in her final moments she smiled at the police station and said, "I'll be fine." But just a few hours later, she had become a dead body. November 9th, 1888. The youngest, the most beautiful, and the most horrifying murder. Mary Jane Kelly was only 25 years old. Her murder took place in her own room, and this time the killer had crossed every imaginable limit. Her face was beyond recognition. Her body was mutilated into pieces, and her organs were scattered across the corners of the room. This wasn't just murder anymore. It had become the killer's obsession. These 5 women were seen as lesser in the eyes of society, but they had hearts too. They had dreams, desires, and a life. They had homes, hopes, and memories, and all of it was stolen by an unknown shadow. After every murder, the people of Whitechapel would whisper only one thing. Have the people walking London streets stopped being human? Has one killer's silence consumed every life around us? Jack the Ripper didn't just slice through flesh. He shattered the very heart of Whitechapel. London of 1888 was modern and industrial, but investigation techniques were still wandering in the dark. The Whitechapel murders were not just brutal. They were the knock of a killer mocking the police system. DNA, CCV, forensic science, there was nothing. Only blood-filled alleys and a killer hidden in the shadows. To face this nightmare, Scotland Yard sent a dedicated officer, Inspector Frederick Aberline, an intelligent but weary man whose face was a mix of exhaustion and determination. He searched every street, every pub, every corner of Whitechapel, but every time he returned empty-handed. The killer was always one step ahead. When the killer's face is not found, then every face becomes a suspect. The police listed over 200 suspects. Montague John Druitt, a barrister and teacher who was found dead in the River Thames after the murders. Aaron Kosminski, a mentally ill barber who was said to hate women. Prince Albert Victor, himself a member of the British royal family, around whom conspiracy theories caught fire. And then Sir William Gull, Queen Victoria's doctor, whom people linked to a secret society. But every theory was just fuel for suspense. No evidence, no conclusion. For the first time in the Victorian era, the media turned true crime into a circus. Every newspaper had the Ripper's story on the front page, details of the corpses, bloody letters, and taunts from the killer. One letter set everything further ablaze, from hell, in which the killer sent a human kidney and wrote, I took one kidney from her and preserved it for you. The pain of the public had now turned into curiosity. People in London started playing games in the name of the Ripper. They laughed, made up theories, but the real victims were forgotten. Inspector Aberline resigned in exhaustion. Scotland Yard didn't close the case, but they admitted, "We have failed." In Whitechapel, people began to suspect every stranger. A long coat made people scream. A strange look in someone's eyes was enough to hand them to the police. The city was no longer afraid of the killer. It was afraid of its own darkness. Jack the Ripper didn't just kill people. He performed a post-mortem on the entire system and then vanished without leaving a single trace. The man hiding in the shadows of Whitechapel, who butchered 5 women into pieces, but his name, even today, is only a suspicion. The case of Jack the Ripper became the world's most difficult whodunit. Every angle, every person, every theory circles around one question. Was his face right in front of us, and we just didn't recognize it? An intelligent barrister and teacher, whose life suddenly collapsed after the murders. He belonged to a respectable family, but his mental breakdowns made him dangerous. After the killings, he disappeared, and then his body was found in the River Thames. Suicide. The police called him a likely suspect, but no direct evidence was ever found. Was it guilt or just a coincidence? A Polish immigrant barber who lived in Whitechapel. His mental health issues were notorious, and it was said that he hated women. The police considered him a suspect, and he was locked away in asylums. One theory even claims his DNA matches a shawl, but whether that shawl was even original, no one knows. The evidence is weak, the timing fits, the suspicion remains. Queen Victoria's doctor, an intellectual, a respected man, or a master killer? Conspiracy theorists claim Gull carried out the murders under royal orders because the victims knew of a secret royal scandal, ritualistic style of murder, anatomical precision and silence. All point toward possible Masonic involvement, but there's no concrete proof, only speculation and shocking imagination. The Queen's grandson. Some say he was mentally unstable, and that his sexual frustrations turned him into a killer. But according to historical records, he wasn't even in London at the time. So was this theory just a media circus, or something more? Another shocking angle. Was Jack the Ripper actually Jill the Ripper, a female midwife who could walk around in blood-soaked clothes without raising suspicion? Because childbirth and abortions were common at the time. No one suspected a woman to be a killer, and maybe that's exactly why she was never caught. The person who wrote the Dear Boss letter, the one who coined the name Jack the Ripper, might not have been the real killer at all. Some historians believe it was just a media stunt, so are we all chasing an imaginary villain? Every suspect has a story, but the evidence, either it's lost, or maybe it never existed at all. Before his retirement, Inspector Aberline said, "Ripper case will haunt us forever, not because of what we know, but because of what we never will." Jack's real face still lingers in the air of Whitechapel. And with every breath, a new theory is born. After 1888, London was never the same again. The alleys of Whitechapel still feel the shadow, where once a killer turned death into an art. The police rethought their methods of investigation. The city reshaped its safety structure. But one question still lingers in people's minds. Can we ever truly be safe? Jack the Ripper didn't just become a killer. He became a symbol, a legend, an unsolved nightmare. Novels and literature tried to dive into his mind. Films gave him a knife and made him immortal. TV shows introduced new suspects and twists every time. Like From Hell, Ripper Street, and countless documentaries. Jack stopped being a person. He became a cultural myth. More than 125 years have passed. DNA technology, crime scene analysis, psychological profiling, everything has been used, but Jack's secret is still a secret. Even today, people write books about him, make podcasts, and take tours through the streets of Whitechapel. What is it about this story that keeps pulling everyone in? Was it just his brutality, or the thought that a human being can hold such darkness? Or maybe because Jack was always among us, never recognized, never caught, and always reappearing with a new identity. Maybe that's why we could never forget him, because Jack the Ripper is actually a reflection of our fear, of that part of our society that hides in the dark and only comes out when everyone else is asleep. After Jack, the world began to see murder and the murderer from a new perspective. His legacy gave birth to modern crime investigation, and his unsolved mystery unlocked the deepest door of the human psyche. He was never caught, but he caught our imagination forever. That darkness of Whitechapel still lingers in the air. And Jack, he still lives on somewhere in someone's mind. If Jack the Ripper was an unsolved mystery, then imagine the secret of a place where entire ships vanish without a trace. Click on the next video. The truth about the Bermuda Triangle that the world wants to hide.